All right. Well, welcome, gentlemen. Welcome, everyone. Welcome. We have resurrected the Smarter Engineering Podcast series. This is not the first episode of our Smarter Engineering Podcast series, but it is maybe fourth or fifth. I should have looked that up before we started. We've got a handful of these. We've done this format or something like this format, I guess, for a number of years now, probably starting back circa 2013, I guess, with our morning show. And we've had a number of these types of informal events that we've run in a different shape or size, I guess, over the years. Smarter Engineering Podcast is one that we started a few years ago, maybe. One of these days, we'll get around to actually making this a consistent thing. Today is that day. Mark my words, gentlemen. Today is that day. We will do this again. So we do have a few episodes already under this Smarter Engineering Podcast moniker. You'll find those up at the YouTube channel, or Cat Dimensions YouTube channel. Those are already up. As far as the format goes, these will be going live on our Demio platform first, and then I think about a week later, these will also find their way to our YouTube channel as well. So if you are not already subscribed to our YouTube channel, what have you been doing? Go ahead and go do that. Hit the bell, because that's what I'm supposed to say with YouTube, I guess, nowadays. So you'll get notified when we put something up that you might be interested in. I think that's about all of the housekeeping things that we need to discuss first and foremost. I haven't said my name. My name is Jesse Sprague, joined by Franco Rotoli and Jim Holtz for this session. Again, welcome, gentlemen.
Pleasure to be here. Glad to be back in front of people, sort of.
Yes, in front of people digitally. Yeah, this is a lot of fun. I think we like this format. Again, we've done a couple of episodes of the podcast. I don't think the three of us have done any episodes of those together, have we? I don't think we have.
I don't think so.
No.
We're used to being live in front of people at the rollouts. That's
Yeah.
kind of why we're doing this again, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We do have a couple cool episodes. I would have to say probably my favorite episode of the ones that we have would be the build battle that Derek and I did a couple of years ago. Now that was a cool format. That was a lot of fun. Maybe at some point in the future we can revisit that, because I enjoyed that.
Long in the future, I may have forgotten how to use Solidworks. It's been a minute.
And once Jim remembers how to use Solidworks, we'll come back to that one.
Don't say that. You're going to be on the phone here in a couple of weeks, I heard, answering tech support. So don't say that. Someone might be watching.
That's true.
Yeah, I can still Google.
Yeah, so fun format. I hope you guys enjoy today. If you're not familiar with us, I guess we'll just do a couple brief backgrounds on us. Engineering background for me. My dad is an engineer, so growing up, you always get the explanation of how things work, and it stuck with me. I'd say automotive stuff is really probably what got me going towards wanting to get into the technical field, cars and motorcycles and all of that. But obviously, when you're a kid playing with Legos and all of those things, just taking things apart, putting them back together, and saying, "Oh, that's how that works." That's pretty cool. These days, I would say I'm probably more interested in the beginning and end stages of the design process. So I really like the industrial design kind of side of things is really cool and interesting to me. And I like the end of things where, the visualization of products and the marketing of products and things like that I find really interesting. I do like the middle sections too. I mean, obviously, Franco and I, we've been part of the sim team for, I don't know, 8-9 years. So I do enjoy the FEA and the heavy duty kind of design stuff. And of course, the CAM stuff is super cool stuff as well. But I would say I gravitate more towards the the interesting side of design. To me, the creative stuff is cool. I'm always impressed by people who can make something work and make it look really good at the same time. Franco, you want to give a quick background?
Sure. So yeah, I mean, mechanical engineering background, obviously, always starts as a kid, right, with Legos. And then as I got a little bit older, much to the chagrin of my parents, I took apart literally everything that I could find a screw or something I could get a screwdriver or flathead into. That evolved into me not getting very many consumer electronics anymore, but taking apart my bike, seeing how the derailleurs work and the gears and things like that, and obviously developed into a passion for engineering and how things work. Kind of the same background as you, not so much on the automotive end. I will take my car to a shop. I will not spend $10,000 retrofitting my car with something like these other two guys that are on this call right now. But yeah, I mean, obviously part of the sim team. Once in school, I fell in love with CAD. I fell in love with simulation and all the kind of nuts and bolts and background and virtualization that goes with that, and just trying to be on the bleeding edge, as they say, of technology is probably one of the coolest things that we do as engineers, right? Just trying to keep up with and push that envelope, and that's what I love to do. So, Jim, I'll pass it on to you.
So kind of similar, right? A Lego situation, taking stuff apart that likely never made it back together. You can ask my wife. I may be a bit of a hoarder with things because you can't throw it out without taking the good electronics and pieces you might need in the future out. But yeah, the engineering stuff was just always interesting mechanically. I am not like Jesse. When I build something, it will look horrible, but it will do what it's supposed to do, and generally contain duct tape because every good invention has to have duct tape on it.
Mm-hmm. Function over form. That's fine.
Function,
If it
yep.
works, it works.
As long as it gets done. But yeah, I mean, I'm by my wife, a hobbyist because I have many different interests that all generally revolve around cool technologies, 3D printing to even a little bit of photography, cars, pretty much anything that's fun. And if it's not fun, I don't like doing it. So
Yeah, I think that's kind of the curse of the curious, isn't it? And I think we're all kind of that way. We like digging into things, and as a result, we get way too many hobbies, or more hobbies than we can afford anyway, that's for sure.
yep.
Very cool.
So actually, Jim. That's a perfect intro to our topic today. You guys probably clicked on the link to register for this if you're on our Demio platform, our webinar platform, and our topic today is robots in industry, good or evil. So obviously that's a catch line, right? But most people not in our industry, not in engineering, right? They think robots. What do you think of? Like Terminator, right? Or good versus evil, bad robots, AI, this and that. We might talk about that in this call, but probably not. We'll probably talk more about industrial robots, or maybe the future of industrial robots, or any cool things that we've noticed. And actually, Jim, what you had mentioned of before you throw things out, right? You collect all the parts. There's a YouTube channel that I subscribe to, and actually subsequently after I started subscribing to it, not related, but that he ended up partnering with Solidworks, and the guy's name is Jeremy Fielding, and one of the videos that we're gonna show you, or at least intro to you, is he is building a 7-axis robotic arm from scratch, and he's programming it all. And in his video series, he basically just goes in and shows you what he's learning. He learns with you, and he's using 3D printed parts as well, which is kind of cool. Jess, I don't know if you want to cue that up and show that.
Sure. Yeah, I watched part of that video too, or that series, I guess. That he was working on that, and that was pretty neat. Have you guys met Jeremy?
I did. I did meet him one of the times I was up at SolidWorks
Okay.
for a VAR presentation, or a VAR meet and greet. He did one of the presentations. I did get to meet him and talk to him.
Cool.
It was pretty cool.
Yeah, I haven't met him, but I've kind of seen him from afar, but I haven't stopped by to say hello. He seems like a nice guy. Yeah, I was watching part of that video. I don't know if there's a real important section here. I'll kind of scrub through it. I don't know what you guys are seeing, but that was an interesting setup that he was got, and I kind of liked. I don't know which video we've got here, but there was a point in time when he was kind of talking about, like, it was sort of like taking over his mental ability, right? He was kind of like he was coming back from a run, or he was like in the kitchen, or I think he was in the bathroom at one point, and it was just like all he was thinking about was this robot that he was trying to build. And I think we all know that situation where you kind of get taken over by the things you're trying to work on. But have you guys, I mean, we kind of went through our background. Did you guys do any real robotics stuff when you were younger, or like coming through?
Go ahead, Jim.
And I was just
Uh,
going to say, I haven't really, I'm not really that into robots. I don't know who picked this topic. Did I pick this topic? I may have.
I
I
think
may
you did,
have.
actually.
I may have.
Sure. So
Some people are really, really into robots, right? And obviously they're pretty cool. I was never super into robots when I was younger. I did, a few schoolmates, and I started our first robotics team, 1559 double tech. But so we had that, and that was a lot of fun. But some people really, really get into it. I was just curious.
yeah, the closest thing I had to a robot was I had the pneumatic set for the Legos. It was
Oh
all
yeah,
kind of prior to the Mindstorm stuff when I was younger, and then I may or may not have bought them for my son so I could play with them.
there
So
you go.
have a little bit more relatable stuff with the newer Legos, the robot. It's really cool. I wish I would have been able to experience that more.
Yeah, my kids are just getting to the age now where they can start doing the Lego robotics in school, and that's going to be fun. I'm gently guiding them into that hobby. But when I was a kid, I mean, I used to have those slot cars, right? And I mean, the closest I got to robotics was swapping the motors out of the the stock cars and stuff. And with my one friend, I remember specifically we were talking about taking apart an RC car and building a helicopter with it or something,
Yeah.
switching the motors around, but not really into you know programming logic or anything like that.
Yeah, yeah, and again, that stuff wasn't really super accessible when we were younger either. But
Yeah, we're old now.
yeah, yeah, that's
I would have
that's
to
for sure.
call this robot good if we're putting a name on it with what he's doing. It's a hobby thing. He's doing it for good, playing
Yep.
around
Yeah,
with it and experimenting and learning.
yeah, and there are a number of them. I mean, we've got a handful of videos. I think in our list, I think we all came up with videos of kind of not the people you would expect to have access to these robots, right? They're kind of getting to a point now where the everyday person can get a hold of them and start using them and playing with them, and that is pretty interesting. I think it'll be very interesting to see what people end up doing with these things as they become more available and not just in the industrial space. But that is an interesting aspect of it.
Yeah, I mean, with the proliferation of like Raspberry Pis and Arduino chips and stuff like that, and just all the open source programming languages and stuff that you can program anything, buy servos on Amazon and program servos to do whatever you want. And this Jeremy guy, I'm not sharing the video anymore, but this Jeremy guy, he started out his channel by finding uh, treadmill motors on the side of the road and repurposing treadmill motors and doing stuff with those. So definitely not that we're not sponsored by him by any means, but definitely check out his channel and see some of his early videos. It's pretty cool. And actually his history is really cool too. He started off as kind of a blue collar worker and kind of got into engineering through the trials and tribulations of you know working in industry, which is pretty neat.
Yeah,
So it's,
yeah. Like I said, I think it'll be very interesting to see what those types of people end up doing with them. I mean, we've seen people. I've got one up now of somebody trying to chainsaw machine a dog with one, and there's just
can
so
you
many
rewind that a little bit, Jess?
so many interesting examples. Franco and I were watching this video the other day. So he was testing with some foam, but he's got his chainsaw attached and he's machining machining away. And this was some of his early prototypes, but he ended up getting something that looked pretty decent, right? I don't know how long it took him to go through the gyrations of it, but definitely
Probably not.
some
Probably
some
not
interesting.
something you can just download a program and write some
No.
code to CNC something in 3 or 5 axis. But
Yeah,
you know,
no, it's interesting you say that because we were on I should have grabbed the link to this, but we were on a webinar with Solidworks with a 3D experience machining tools that look absolutely awesome, and they were talking about that how it's a little bit easier in their system to kind of switch back and forth. Where if you're programming from a mill machine, you can switch it over to a robot fairly easily. I haven't dug into those a whole lot yet, but that's a really cool application because I feel like these robots are definitely going to be they have the capability to do potentially more, right? They're already being used as additive systems. Now, if you're starting to mix where, and I'm sure they've got some stiffness issues compared to an actual fully enclosed machine, but if you can use that one tool to additive and remove around, unlimited bounds, we'll say, right? If you can move the robot around a little bit, that really does open up some interesting opportunities, I guess, for manufacturing, right? If you can have this more human-like system working around a piece and adding and removing geometry as it goes, that is pretty darn cool.
So
You know what,
from a
though? I'm
useful,
going to count this one as evil, though, because it's got a chainsaw mounted to the end of it, and it can
It,
go very, very wrong very, very quickly.
Now, we should probably take a step back because Franco, you mentioned earlier as far as robots being good or evil. And I had the same bullet point that you actually mentioned at the beginning. You said AI. And I think actually those two things get kind of stuck together, right? Because when you think of like robots taking over the world, it's like the AI is the brain, but it's always using a robot, right? But I think if you are looking at an industry level of good or evil, it's probably a little bit different. And I don't know, how helpful the conversation of robots taking over the world is here, but I think the concern on our level is more, are the robots going to take people's jobs, right? More so than the AI using robots to take over the world. And obviously there are some practical concerns there, but I think more immediately it's probably not that, but it's just we have people who need to work. Are these robots going to take over their places and displace people?
Yeah, I mean that's not a new conversation either, right? That's been
No.
around since the industrial age started, right? And it's just my opinion, and everyone has their own opinion. Is it moves where the jobs are, right? You don't have the people making the trinkets. You have the people fixing the robots and the machines that are making the trinkets, and programming the robots that are making the trinkets, and things like that. It just kind of shifts the work to other places. Does it displace some people? Yes. But I don't think you can ever get away with that with the progression of society. I don't think you can ever get away with that. But as far as like putting everybody out of work, I don't see that happening anytime soon.
Yes,
the
certainly
other
not.
thing too is, I mean, you're not gonna it's gonna take us a time investment to program it to do a specific task. It can't change quickly like a human. So I mean, there is still some aspect of needing that human for the short-term custom one-off things. Like I'm sure he spent a lot more time programming the dog carving out of that foam than if he would have just done it by hand. But if he's got to make a million of them, yeah, obviously the robot does make sense in that scenario, but
Right. Yeah, and I definitely had that listed on my list of cons for robots as well too, right? Is that they're not a very reactive system. They're kind of rigid in what they can actually do. Obviously, they're expensive to set up and get going, but you have to have that repeatable task that it's doing over and over again. And they're getting better at reacting to their surroundings, right? We see robots that are driving themselves through, setups and missing people and all of that, so they have some intelligence, that have growing intelligence, I guess, but they are definitely not reactive anywhere nearly to the point of where you could say, hey Bob, go do this for me, and he goes off and does it, right? So that's definitely the case, and again, that's something for the foreseeable future as well.
Yeah, I mean, even when you start talking about the AI, there's someone that has to program the AI to be reactive, at
Yes.
least for now. At least for the next foreseeable. I'm thinking dozen years, but
how,
who knows?
Yeah.
how about a positive usage for a robot? We take a battle bot, another type of robot, right? They are fun to watch. Put a 5-axis thing on top of it so it can go, get you tools when you're out in the garage
Yeah,
instead of having to
and,
yell at your kid that's not listening.
and it gets you the wrong tool.
Yeah.
No, but then it's already out there, right? The Amazon robots. We don't have a video queued up for that, unless Jess, you have
Yeah.
one. But
No, I don't.
the Amazon robots, that's what they do, right? Everything's barcoded. It knows where
Yeah.
everything is, and it just goes and fetches things.
Yeah, the pick
That's
pick and
awesome.
place. Yeah,
Yep.
pick and place stuff. Yep.
But I mean, the infrastructure needed around that is massive, just so massive.
Right.
And I think it'll evolve. I mean, the cool part about it is that, like you hit on before with Raspberry Pis and, people having access to 3D printers and all sorts of this, low level technology, you can have exposure to building something like this so that when you do go to school and start working as you get older, like you've already had exposure and experience in a different creativity idea set, and then you need people like Jesse to make it look pretty. But it's kind of the background of it. Kids tinkering. I mean, I can recall multiple situations where things I tinkered with as a kid have been useful, later on in my life. So they got lots of cool toys now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's for sure. Now, I think one of the things that Franco you mentioned earlier is, trying to sort out whether, if we're going down the road of, are robots good or evil in the industrial sense, taking your jobs, or, what are they positive or not? I think some of that struggle, and I think you alluded to this earlier, is that they haven't really been around for a whole lot of time enough to really get much data. And I found that when I was searching around too, I was reading an article. There was a study done in 2018 that kind of said, well, we're not really seeing any displacement of jobs. It seems to be the labor distribution is pretty much the same, and robots have been coming in. And then I was reading another article that was just released fairly recently that kind of flipped that back, and they said, well, first of all, there isn't a lot of data. So it's, anytime that you don't have a lot of data, you've always got a greater chance of having noise there, right? Or misreading the data. But this article was saying that when they looked at the data for that in 2018, they kind of took a broad approach, and they looked kind of across industries. And this article that I was reading was kind of implying that when they sort of dug a little bit deeper on that data and looked across the cross section of those industries, that it was the data is kind of being padded by industries that really they don't have a lot of robot adoption yet. So if those industries don't have a lot of robot adoption, then obviously there's not going to be a whole lot of change there. So it's only when you get past the 75th percentile of things that they were looking at that there was really any change in robot um, the scale there. So they kind of went back and tried to look at that again, just in that small segment. But I think kind of admittedly in the paper they said it doesn't look as good as was recently predicted, but at the same time we still don't have a lot of data. It's kind of early in the process to really tell where this is going.
That's interesting. I mean, you think about the automotive industry, automotive manufacturing from Jess, you and I, the other day, we were talking about the Model T, right?
Yeah.
100 years ago, barely
Yeah.
100 years ago,
Yep.
everything was built by hand. Now, I mean, you go to any automotive manufacturing assembly line and there's people there. There's certainly people there guiding the cars down the line and making sure that the robots don't crash into things and, safety and things like that. But I mean, it's almost 100% automated. So, I mean, it's interesting that article would say that.
Yeah, certainly. But I mean that's a good specific industry that was listed as one of the ones. But if you grow that out over all of the industries that you would consider in a GDP or whatever, you got like agriculture and all of those things that really aren't using them for any purpose yet. There are definitely specific subsets of industries that use it pretty heavily. But I think even in the automotive field, I made a note of this too with a company like Tesla going out and doing, relying so heavily on their automation. And they've had, pretty significant issues, right, in building that. But at the same time, they're not a car company, right? So you have to wonder, like, is it growing pains from figuring out how to build automobiles, or is it growing pains from figuring out how to do automation? It's a blend of the two, is the reality of it, and trying to pick that data apart and figure out, how things are going there and on one side without it, including the other. It's tough to say.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Speaking of useful things, Jess, I think you need to queue up that, which one I'm talking about. Jimmy knows which one I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, the
Sword
fun
fighting
side of
robots.
robots. Yeah.
Sword fighting, of
So
course.
this is what happens when you get engineers that are bored.
What would a robot discussion be without a good sword fight?
Yeah, it's definitely, it was cool to see how. I'm curious how long it took them to program these things to get them, to those movements, but it's very, very precise, and it does go to show the accuracy they can, grab or
Yeah, that
really
really
hold.
is incredible. I mean, when you consider the dynamics of what's going on there, I've heard a little bit about that programming side, and to be honest with you, that side, I think for me, the grippers and the actual programming side of the robots is more interesting to me than the robots themselves. But I mean, that's quite a bit of mass. Obviously, they try to make them as light as possible, but that's quite a bit of mass to be swinging around at the speeds that they can, wrap it at.
Well,
and have to
yeah,
figure out. I
and
think
stop
it's
it,
all
right?
PID controlled, right? It's similar to
Yeah,
what we were doing with the drone back in the day, obviously on a much grander scale here, but I think the dynamics of it are pretty similar.
yeah. To be able to take a 100-pound mass and accelerate it and then stop it and know how long it's going to take to stop so that it lands in just the right position. I mean,
Right.
that says volumes
Yeah,
on the
different
brains
rates of
behind
speed.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think actually Jeremy Fielding talks about that during his first. I only think I only watched like the first couple of his builds, but he
I think
definitely
so. I do
talks
too.
about that because that's very important. You know, like you said, accelerating and more importantly, decelerating that mass
Yeah.
is really really
Well,
important.
and I think you're right with the PID stuff, Jess, because like you said, with the drones and it depends on how quickly it accelerates. And I know from firsthand experience, if you mess up the PID numbers, that thing will oscillate so bad in the air, it'll just fall down.
Yep.
May have done that a time or two.
Yeah.
Another one of the hobbies.
Yeah. I guess drones could sort of be considered robots.
Yeah.
I mean, with the autonomy that's built into them, I think that's the other part about the robots is like there's the ones that are physically doing stuff, and then there's kind of more the autonomy side. A crop sprayer can drive itself across the field. You just sit in it and GPS program it. The
Yep.
cars are self-driving. Like, is that considered a robot or is that the AI?
Yeah, that's a good point, right? Because going right back to the data that I was just discussing, I guess it's not as straightforward as you would think it would be nowadays as far as what are we considering a robot? Because you're right. I mean, the tractor in the field behind me, I'm sure is running off a GPS. It's a tractor, but it's sort of a robot. I mean, you're right. It is getting information from somewhere else and it's knowing what to do and where to go. So that is an interesting distinction. I didn't even look into that direction of things, but I would have to imagine that our definition of robot is probably shifting.
Yeah, I mean, we're getting philosophical here, right? Thinking back to like the original robots in like I'm picturing like in the 50s, and it's a guy in a big tin suit or whatever, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Versus what we're talking about here, and actually just that's probably a good transition into what is a robot over to that Veritasium video that I shared with you guys.
Yeah, that
Um,
was a really interesting one.
so if those of you listening don't subscribe to Veritasium, it's a channel that I absolutely love, and it's hang on, I got to change the size of this. Jess, can you just pause that real quick?
Yeah, sure.
Um, oh, there we go. That worked. Okay, you can unpause that. Nope, no, it didn't work. Sorry, and a couple technical difficulties when it comes
Yeah.
to. There we go. Okay.
Now that this
Um,
format is a permanent fixture, we'll be doing this on a regular basis. We'll smooth things out as we
yeah.
go.
So
Yeah.
Veritasium is a channel that I subscribe to. I absolutely love it. I was one of the first subscribers to that video, I think, or to that channel, and he's got a series of a couple different robotics here, where this is a robot which is it considered a robot, but it's basically an inverted tube, like those kids' toys that you get at the carnival or at
Yeah.
the uh, wherever you get them, right? The can't stick in your hand. It's basically a pneumatic powered one of those. And in this video, we won't watch the whole thing, but in this video, they just kind of talk about how it can go over sticky things like what we're seeing here, because obviously it doesn't move. It can go around corners. So think of like earthquake rescue, right? You mount a camera to the end of this thing, and you can get it through. And in this case, it's going through a bed of nails. So as long as the pressure on the input side is higher than the output through the poked holes, then it'll still work. So it's really cool. So when you think about robotics, what robotics are and what they can be, it's really limitless. This is a series of a couple of those that you can control the end of it based on how much air is going in each of the bladders or whatever. So it's not just industrial machines. It's not just, manufacturing equipment. It's really anything, and we were talking about drones, right? The military, the firefighters, they're all using semi-autonomous or remote controlled vehicles to
Well,
do things, to do tasks, right?
they're using them in farming and mapping with special cameras on them now to, read the conditions of the soil, and they can be programmed to fly a pattern and come back and land and take off. I mean, I've seen light shows done with drones where they're
Hmm.
all
Yeah.
organized together and working together as a team. And I mean, I guess that's considered a robot at that stage, right? I mean,
Yeah. They
what
yeah,
it really is.
the swarm algorithm that they've come up with now. They did it for the Super Bowl a couple of years ago, didn't they?
Yeah,
Maybe
it might have been for that. Yeah.
this is cool. I never thought about it that way, but it's is a robot anything that can kind of adapt, by itself. But then
Yeah.
there's the
Uh,
enhanced robots that enhance a human, the bio stuff, and
right. Exoskeleton kind of thing.
yeah.
That Veritasium video is cool. I hadn't seen that one before. Um, but it kind of reminds me of Festo, who was at Solidworks World. I put up a post on LinkedIn maybe a week or two ago about their, morphing robot. They have the biomimicry stuff or whatever that they do. And I put up, I think, a post about their robots or something, and it must have been one of my most interacted with LinkedIn posts in quite a while. Everybody stopped by to say, "Oh man, I remember when Festo came and they had their flying bird that they flew around in the general session." You guys were both at that session, right? Was that 2013? I think.
12.
I don't
Was it
remember.
12?
I
Was way
probably
back.
have a video, but it looks like it was taken on a potato because I probably had a flip phone then. So
Yeah, so I thought the same thing. I went back and I looked, and I didn't take a video of that. Somehow, I take a video of everything. I didn't take a video of that for some reason or another. But yeah, everybody stopped by to say, that was the coolest thing I've ever seen, was this robotic bird flying around. But the flip side to that was they had grippers. I mentioned earlier that I think the grippers are crazy interesting. I don't know if you can show my screen, but that little Veritasium thing that you were talking about reminded me of one of those grippers that they were showing. Yeah, I think they showed a couple of these in that session. That was a long time ago now, but
yeah.
some of those soft grippers, I think they're working on like an octopus tentacle one that they're looking at, which is so cool. But I mean, it's kind of the blending the
Yeah,
lines of what you think a robot is, right? I just saw, we're still looking at my screen, but I just saw
Yep.
this video just last week, I think, from this kind of like origami based gripper idea that they were, just literally laser cutting some paper and using these like with different, stiffnesses and whatever to grip different things. I mean, you can see kind of what their idea is, and people are so creative. I would have never thought, for these things. They have one that kind of like wraps around a pencil, and all sorts of these different shapes that can grab onto certain things, right? Struggles with traditional approaches, but these like little soft touch end of arm devices are so cool. Yeah, here's one I was talking about where it just kind of like,
That's
shoop,
really cool.
so neat.
I saw the preview of this that when we were looking at the videos that we were going to share. I saw the preview of this. I didn't actually click on the video, but that is
Yeah.
awesome. That's such a good idea.
Yeah, very cool. Boston University thing there. I think I just saw the article for this yesterday or day before, something like that. But really, really cool ideas. But it is kind of one of those things where I'm not really sure what our definition of robot is going to be in a few years because of that. They're all kind of morphing together. And not that I guess that the label is important. All of these tools are definitely cool, but it is interesting.
Cool.
Definitely
Cool.
interesting.
So what do we think? Do we think good, evil, neutral, potential to be both?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with potential to be both. I think for probably on both of the counts that we talked about, whether robots are good or evil, I think ultimately it's going to be a blessing. I think having a human move a block from here to there, which a robot can do very well, it's not a good use of a human, right? And I think when we're talking about this area, I think a lot of times they say, well, it's unskilled labor that it's being replaced, right? Things that aren't considered skilled labor typically aren't being replaced by robots right now. But I think when you look at the difference between any human and a robot, I think that skilled labor, it really gets blurred. Any human has critical thinking skills and cognitive ability far beyond any robot that we have, again, for the foreseeable future. So I don't know, economically how this works, but I think that I would rather see those people working on the problems of our day, right? Lord knows we have plenty of problems of our day, and even if they're not the best person to be working on that problem, if they can not be doing something that is essentially a waste of their time, that human resource can be put to something better. I think actually, I wonder. I was just thinking of a quote that I think might have been in that same SolidWorks World 2013. I think was it Vijay Kumar was his name, I think, who did the drones, and actually coming back to the disaster relief you were talking about.
Yeah.
They did some of that, and I think somewhere in his talk he was talking about the democratization of CAD tools, I think, and he said something about like, you get more shots on goal, you're going to have more successes. So I think in my mind, if robots can replace things that humans could be doing something better, we just get more shots on goal and a greater chance of success. Again, I don't really know what that looks like economically. If I knew that answer, we probably wouldn't be all just sitting talking on the internet. Maybe be off doing solving that. But yeah, I'm gonna go with ultimately good.
Jim?
I'm on the undecided. I need to see kind of what the future brings, but I do agree with the points Jesse made. I will say that if a robot can bring me an ice cold beer, then it's definitely good. So
There you go. It's a low
we should
bar.
get to working on that.
Jim, you got enough Arduino experience and Raspberry Pi experience. You can probably make that happen.
Like I said before, I'm really good at Googling and copying code.
Yeah.
Well,
That's my experience.
we had the Boston Dynamic dog beer delivery unit, which we won't go into in this session, but he had a very amusing delivery.
Yeah, we can't get into it in this format, but if you just Google that and see the video, you'll appreciate it, I'm sure.
Yep.
Um, I think I'd have to say I'm going to say good. I'm going to agree with Jesse. I think that on the micro level, on the personal level, it might be bad because it's going to displace some people. But I think long term, from a social standpoint, or what's the word I'm thinking of, like a humanity standpoint, I think it's going to move humanity forward more than hurt it. I think we got a lot of smart people as far as like the AI goes. I think we got a lot of smart people out there, watching over us. At least I hope to squash any robotic overlords. But
You watched Fast and the Furious again, didn't you?
What's that?
You watched Fast and the Furious again, didn't you?
No, Terminator, not Fast and the Furious.
Terminator.
So I think that's probably good for this session. We didn't really get into too many of the videos that we wanted to show, but we when we started talking about industrial robots, we were going to kind of start talking about virtual reality and how that mixes into it. We originally we're going to talk about what's it called, the Da Vinci robot, right? Where it's that remote doctor, right? And where a doctor's looking through a set of VR goggles and he's got hand controls and he's controlling a robot, hopefully across the room, but could be across the country, across the world, doing surgeries. Maybe we'll talk about that next time. But really, I think next time we're going to be focusing on augmented reality and virtual reality. And it can be as simple as something like uploading your SolidWorks model into a VR space, right, into your VR manufacturing facility and seeing how it fits. We know that eDrawings can do that now. And we have some pretty cool stuff planned for our next video of us showing that, not with eDrawings, but with other platforms. And it can go from that. It can go to the Da Vinci robot that we were talking about, and beyond. Who knows? You'll have to tune into our next Smarter Engineering podcast to see what we come up with there. And I'm going to leave most of that on Jesse because that's all rendering stuff. So that's all Jesse's.
Well, basically, Franco got some new toys that he wants to play with.
I bought my son a VR headset for his birthday.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, I admittedly, another topic maybe that I picked that I'm not super interested in the VR XR, but I've definitely more in the past few months been kind of curious about it because I mean, I think you mentioned with, Visualize and things like that, it's seeing is believing, right? I mean, I think we all know that. And it's always been kind of a gimmicky thing up until, kind of recently. And I think that's changing. So I'll be curious to see if we can change my mind and see is VR, XR, AR, or anything you want to call it. Is it here for the SolidWorks user, or is it still a little pie in the sky yet?
Yep. So definitely, I'll let you wrap it up, Jess. But I just want to let everyone know, obviously subscribe to our next podcast or our next webinar through our website, or subscribe and like and subscribe, whatever you do on YouTube.
Doesn't matter the order.
To make sure you get notified when we upload our next session.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think I have anything else to wrap up. That was perfect. We'll see you guys next time, and thanks for tuning in.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
See ya.
Bye.